We shift our focus to this week's parsha, Parshas Nitzavim. This year, of course, they're broken up. Shabbos Shuvah is Parshas Vayelach this year, but typically we have the oft-adjoining Parshios of Nitzavim and Vayelach. 7 occurrences throughout the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, where we have 7 times that Parshios could be Parshios B'Shutfos, Kila Parshios Mitzurafos. We can have and Nitzavim Vayelach, but it occurs this year, they will be distinct parshios. But writes Rabbi Yaakov Katina in his Sefer Korban Ani in the first kanta, the first shtickle in Parshas Nitzavim, and he repeats the idea in his second kanta on Parshas Vayelach. These oft-adjoining parshios in Nitzavim Vayelach are to highlight what? Yes, Rashi, based on the Medrash, tells us that Nitzavim, in a sense, is to be understood the Shvach Klal Yisrael. You just heard 100 minus 2 klaus. A 98 klaus, and you're sinking into utter despair. Don't worry about it. Out in Nitzavim, you're still here. You're still standing after all this time. Mamela, Out in Nitzavim understood the Shvach, but writes Rabbi Yaakov Katina, and when you contrast it with Parshas Vayelach, it actually can be understood in a pejorative fashion, in a Lashon Haganai. What does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu is giving a Mussar Shvus to Klal Yisrael. Atem Nitzavim, you're Omdim, you're standing still, idle, motionless, you're not growing, you're not steiging. But in contradistinction to Klal Yisrael, I'll wait just 1 week, and what will you read? Or in the oft-adjoining Parshios, right afterwards, what do you witness? Vayelach Moshe. Moshe's a holy, he's on the move, he's on the go. The same way we're introduced to Avram Avinu. How do we know Avram Avinu? Parshas Lech Lecha, that's the Nekudas Agadlus. Mishnah Perkei Perkei Mishnah Gimel B'Yasor Nisyonos. Nesnas Avram Avinu, Rashi and Rabbi Yonah, based in Perkei Lezer Kivshan Eish, is the first of the 10 Nisyonos of Avram Avinu. Writes the Rambam and Peir Shemishnayis of Fanart Alatar. I know the first Nisayon is Lech Lecha. After all, Ur Kastim, it's a subtle allusion, Derech Remez Ba'almo, to the Kivshan Eish. But which Nisayon appears overtly, openly in the pages of Chumash? Lech Lecha Me'artzecha. That's the Rambam, that's the first Nisayon, and it makes sense. So Yitzchak Isachava writes, Akiv Shaneish is first and foremost to destroy, to metaphorically burn up the Avram of old. But henceforth, Mikano Lahabo, what are you going to be? His essence, his core, Mahus, is defined as what? As a Lech Lecha, as a Holech. He's a Holech Mechaya Lechaya from place to place. Always growing and always steiging. And that's the Galus of Avram Avinu. Klal Yisrael, Ata Nitzavim. You want to be an Itzav, you want to be an Omei No, Vayelech Moshe, you got to be a Holech Mechayel Lechayel. Brocha Samach Dalet Aman Aleph at the end of the Masechta. Tamina Chomim, they're always doing what? They're going Mechayel Lechayel. Hein Lahem Enucha, Lo B'Yolam Hasav, Lo B'Yolam Haba. They're always growing, they're always steiging. That's the way it's got to be. And if you want to depart from Avram Avinu's inner circle, and you want to go down to the city of Sodom, as Rav Eisenman, as we've quoted in his name many times, when Lot and his wife are being rescued from Sodom and are bringing you to be in the Shechunah, in the proximity of Avram Avinu, don't turn back. You turn back, you still want to go back to Sodom. Eshes Lot, you still want to return to a place that's the exact opposite, the antithesis of everything that Avram Avinu personifies and embodies. Then what? What's a punishment? You don't want to be in the company of a Holech, of a Lech Lecha, of an Avram Avinu who's a Holech Mechayel Lechayel. You want to turn back to the city of Sodom. Then what's going to be your appropriate punishment? She turns into, quite not surprisingly, a Netziv Melach, a Netziv. She is a Nitzav, she's an Omei, she's not interested in growing and steiging. And it's juxtaposed accordingly to what Melach, what is salt? Salt is a preservative. Before they had refrigeration, you want to preserve the status quo. How do you keep food precisely as it is currently? You go out and you salt it. What is salt? A preservative. That's Eshes Lot. What's Eshes Lot? I don't want to be in the company of an Avram who's a Holech, who's a Lech Lecha. I want to go back to Sodom. I don't want to grow. I don't want to steig. I'm not interested in growing. That's the connecting Netziv Melach. She's a Netziv. She's a pillar. She's an Omeid. She's an Ata nitzavim. She is melach. She is salt. She doesn't want to grow. She didn't turn into a salt shaker. She's not shaking. No, she's a salt pillar. She's a pillar. She ain't going nowhere. And what's a Migna Gemida? Gafris v'melach. Interesting. What happens to the city of Sodom? You're not interested in growing. What's the going to be the expected punishment? Sulfur and salt is going. What do you go to the salt hills? It's all by Sodom. What's salt? You can't grow anything in salt. Salt is the paradigm of maintenance of the status quo, keeping things, preserving things as they currently and presently are. Mela, there's no growing anything in Sodom. You don't want to grow, you're not going to grow at all. You're going to stay exactly the way you are, and that is the city of Sodom. There is no growth. Oh, by the way, there's only one place in all of Chumash that actually says Sodom was destroyed with Gafris v'melach, and where is that? You guessed it, Parshas Nitzavim. Quite expectedly, this week's Parsha, Nitzavim, Nitzav Melach, Gafris v'melach, it all makes sense. And the Feiner what's her punishment? Not just turning into a pillar of salt, but the Medrash and Perek Elazar and Perek Chafei says that every night the Shvarim, the oxen, come out of the nearby forest and they lick off the salt from the pillar of salt from Eishes Lo, and every night miraculously that pillar of salt of Eishes Lo replenishes itself. Nobody sees what's going on. My Davava, my Nafkamina, the Feiner that Kufa highlights. We need to know the Chazal why. She wasn't interested in growing. She's going to be a Nitziv Melach. Melach, preservative, salt. She's going to stay the way she is forever. Nitziv, Apta Nitzavim, and Nitziv, and Omeid. And what? But what's a chelik of the Tikkun? Every night she's going to replenish herself. It's got to be growth. What, Mela, you're going to lose your salt. Overnight it's going to come back. They're going to lick it off again. The constant state of replenishment, highlighting what? Continuous growth. That's part of the tikkun. You have to keep growing. The malachim who don't have a chira chavshas, they can't grow, they can't steig, they don't have liman Torah, they don't have a siyas mitzvahs. Hence the Navi Zachari per Gimel Posuk Zayin and Asati L'cham Malichim Eina Om D'Meila. The tzaddikim compared to what? To Malichim, to Holchim, Echayil Echayil. And what about the Malachim? They're omdim, they're nitzavim, they're not going anywhere. We got to grow, we got to steig. That's the Sefer Divrei Yisrael and Yoni Nisuin and Maimer Beis. I heard the same word from Rabbi Yosef Telner Zatzal, quoting Rabbi Aaron Koller. He says a similar idea in Chelak Aleph of Mishnah Rabbi Aaron. And that is, we turn our attention to Sukkim and Hayim and Beis. Pella Dikki Gemara. Amar Rav Shimon Achai, Reisi B'nei Aliyah Mu'atan Hay. So few B'nei Aliyah, people in the world interested in growing and steiging. And Me'elaf Hein Aniyah B'na Mehen. If there are only 1,000 B'nei Aliyah in the world, then my son and I to be counted amongst them. And Me'ahein Aniyah B'na Hen. Then likewise, only 100 in the world, my son and I are going to be counted amongst them. And if there are only 2 B'nei Aliyah in the ganze Welt, in the whole world, only 2 B'nei Aliyah, Aniyah B'na Hey, and my son and I, Rav Shimon, and the Heilige Tana Eloki, Rav Shimon Chai, we're the 2 B'nai Aliyah. Asks Rabbi Aaron Koller, asks the Sefer Divrei Yisrael, and Yoni Nisu and Maimer Beis. It seems to ring of a sense of complacency, Chalil V'chas, arrogance on the part of the Tana HaKodesh, Niskam V'Yosef, the Heilige Rashbi. What does that mean? Zok Rabbi Aaron Koller, Zok the Divrei Yisrael. He's not showing off Chalil V'chas. He's saying even if there are only 1,000 people in the whole world interested in growing and steiging, I'm going to make sure that my son and I are counted amongst them. 100, the same nakuda. And if no one in the world wants to grow, no one in the world wants to steig, Reise B'nei Aliyah, not B'nei Torah, B'nei Aliyah, those who want to be Ola Mechayil Achayil, Eilu Leila, continuous ascent on the ladder, the Sulam HaTorah, the Sulam HaRuchni, the Sulam HaAvos Hashem, the Sulam of Yiras Hashem. You don't want to grow, even if there's no one in the world. If there are only going to be 2 B'nei Aliyah, no one's growing, no one's steiging, I'm going to ensure that at least, the very least, my son and I, L'kol HaPachas, are always going to be interested in growing, even if no one else is growing around us. Similar to the Vort of the Alter and the Vardik, the Madrigas Adam explaining the Machlekes Rabbi Seinu Darsha, going back to the outset of Parshas Noach. Do we understand Noach is tzaddik tamim haya b'dorosav? Is it l'shvach? Is it l'gnai? So we have an opinion that says it's gnai. You put him in the door of Avraham Avinu, and then what? He's not going to be a tzaddik. Why interpret l'gnai? What's the pshat? What's going on? It's like the Madrigas Adam. Zok the Alter and the Vardik, when he discusses Tkufas Noach, Avad, everybody agrees is a tzaddik. It's undeniable. The Torah states states it, Baruch ben Chakatana. He was a tzaddik Tomim. In the Briskerov, based on the Targum, he was a Gvar Shalim. He was a tzaddik Tomim. What's the Vart? Yes, up the Alter Nevardik. Are you going to say that he was always interested in growing? And that's the Sibul, the Shvach, that if you put him in the Dover of Avinu, was a Holech, who's on the move, was on the go, that's going to inspire him to steig even more. But Yehola Gnai, what's that? He looked around and said, I'm not interested in growing. I just can't be like them. I can't espouse their depraved and moral, perverse, and corrupt ways. So I'm going to be a tzaddik. You put him in the door of Avram. Oh, everybody's good. I got him in Avram Avinu. I'm his next door neighbor. Let him do all the Torah. Let him do all the mitzvahs. And I'll just sit here and relax. He'll still be a tzaddik. He's not going to do anything wrong. But he's not growing. He's not steiging. He's not working on maximizing his potential. Noach loshem menucha. I'm quiet. I'm at peace. It's all fine. I don't want to grow. I don't want to steig. That's an understanding. Al Pi, the Alter Nevardik Madrigas Adam. That's an end of the Gnai. So we got to grow, and we have to steig. We always got to be on the move, always be on the go. One of the Iker Zamani Aliyah, well, we have 3 tkufas, 3 periods throughout the course of the Jewish calendar year. Sholosh Regolim, Tachagli Bashana. Now, why do we call them Regolim? Why are they called Regolim? Because we use our feet, Aliyah L'Regel. The Ramban writes that Aliyah L'Regel had to be reiterated, discussed yet again. We were introduced to the Sholosh Regolim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, in the context of Parshas Mishpat. And of course, we'll read about it in the centerpiece of Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Emor. We'll read about him again. We'll talk about the Karbanos Hachag and Parshas Pinchas, Sefer Bamidbar. And then in Mishnah Torah, we'll have the Chazorah and Parshas Re'eh. Ask the Ramban, why'd you have to repeat the Regolim and Sefer Shmos? You tell me them in Mishpatim. And then a few Parshas later, right away in Kisisa, yet again, Sholosh Regolim, Tachal Yibashana. Zok Ramban, because they thought on the heels in the aftermath of Chet Egel, Klal Yisrael were so worried, maybe we lost the Iker mitzvah of Yontiv, which is Aliyah L'Regel, Kamash Hashem Yisparach, reassure them, Klal Yisrael, I love you, don't worry, I'm going to give it right back to you, you can have Aliyah L'Regel. The Iker mitzvah of Yontiv is Aliyah L'Regel. What's Aliyah L'Regel? Take your Reglayim, figuratively speaking, but you got to be Ola L'Mayla L'Mala, you got to be growing, you got to be steiging. That's Aliyah L'Regel. No coincidence that, turning back the pages to Vayishlach, the all-night wrestling match of Yaakov and Sarah Shal Esav. And what does he aim for? Yes, Yaakov emerges the victor, but the Sarah Shal Esav, the Koach of Sam in the world, he targets one and specifically only one area, and he gets him where? Vayiga b'kaf Yerecho, he gets him in his regel. Why? Because l'chayra the machlokes Yaakov and Esav is Yodo Chezes speak of who's got whose foot. Shizek comes a nofel, one's up and one's down. Who's standing on his 2 feet? That's the whole night of the wrestling match. I'm going to get Yaakov because Yaakov is fighting a Malach. The Malach is a Nitzav, is an Omeid. He's got to get the Holech of Yaakov where? In his Koach Halicha and his figurative Raglayim that highlights the Koach Halicha. Very geschmack. That is the Machloikes between Yaakov and Esav. After all, what's the first time we notice a distinction between the two of them? Where are you running to? You're running with the Koach of the Raglayim. Are you running to base Knesset, base Menusha Yaakov, or you're running to the base of Avodah like an Esav? What are you doing with your Aglayim? Because as that comes a nofel, who's standing on his 2 feet? That's the whole machlekes. Who's got the power of the feet? And of course, you see it fleshed out and manifest Purim time. Purim time, the whole idea is Haman insisting, Mordechai, bow down to me. Give me your koach Aglayim. Give up the koach Aglayim and bow down to my Aglayim. I want you to walk me all over town. My feet will sit ever comfortably on the horse of Achashverosh, and you use your feet to be subjugated before mine, and you're going to walk me all around town. Death by hanging. Why does that come to Haman's mind? What's death by hanging? You put a noose around the neck, and then you strip away from the person his koach amida barglayim. You take away the stool, you take away the chair, and then what? Then once you take away his koach amida barglayim, that's how you go in and kill him. The whole Indian is Haman and Yaakov and Mordechai is the Arizal says Gilgulim of Yaakov and Esav respectively. It's Yaakov and Esav all over again. Who's got the koach barglayim and hapochu? I turn the tables upside down, and it's Haman using his feet to walk Mordechai all over town. Haman, death by hanging, Vayislo Osav as one of Alates. And of course, he ultimately bows down, right? The Ibn Ezra, he bows down to Esther pleading for his life. So what is Purim all about? Hua Pur, Hua Goral. Goral, Gimel Reish Lamed. What's Purim all about? So let's do precisely that. If you're Mahabech, the Goral, you get Gimel Reish Lamed, and you turn it upside down. What do you get? The Regel. The whole Indian of Purim is who's got the Regel, who's got the Koach Raglayim. That's the battle. So that is Aliyah L'Regel. Always using the feet. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, leave your home. Now you got to inspire yourself and endure a Gavaldik Cyrus. Use your Aglayim to be Liros Velos Pnei Hashem. It's about an Aliyah L'Regel. And with that we get to Rosh Hashana. Get to Rosh Hashana. We know that there's a big din in the poskim. I wrote about this extensively in the footnotes of my essay, taking note of the Nolas New Year. Big machlokes in the Rishonim and Achonim. How do we understand the mitzvah of Simcha on Rosh Hashana? And the end of the day, Kamat, all the poskim agree. There's an element, like the Rambam writes in Ochas Chanukah, that they're not days, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Yemei Adin, the days of awe, the Yom Naram. You're right, they're not days of Simcha Yisera. But the Rambam is Medayik, they're not days of Simcha Yisera. But clearly there are days of Simcha. There's an Indian of what? Of celebrating, of having an Indian of Simchas Yantav, even on Rosh Hashanah. Like the Sasema says, it's got to be scaled back somewhat, because Tikabah Kodesh Shofar Ba'kesel Yom Chagenu. It is a Chag, and the Pasuk clearly indicates in Rei, Sugya Narvei Psachim Kavtesem and Aleph, this Samata B'Chagecha, so it's called a Chag, right? The Sasemes, Ay Ba'kesel Yom Chagenu. It's a Chag celebrated, but do it b'der kisoi, a little bit ba'ofen b'chusa v'mutzna, conceal it a little bit. It's Simcha, but it's a diminished Simcha. So it's a Chag. It's not a regel. Why not? Why not a leader regel? The Feiner is Eytan. What's going on Rosh Hashana? How it's going on Yom Kippur? What are the Yom Naram all about? The same way, the Seder Hayom writes, and the same way Rav Schwab writes on page 411 of Rav Shlomo Tefillah, quoting Rav Shamshon for Hirsch. The same way the Maharal writes in his Siva Solam and the Siv Avod and Perek Zayin. What is Shmoneh Esrei called? The Amida. The Amida, we stand still. Brachas Tafiram and Beis, we stand still like the Malachim, who of course don't have Bechira Chavshis. Ayin Ramchal Hagdam and Derech Eitz Chaim, the Maharal and so many others. They don't have Bechira Chavshis. They are what? Omdim. Hayisim Nasati L'Chamalich Mena Omdim Eila. They're Omdim, they're and we stand in Shmoneh Esrei, what's it called? The Amida service. Stand like a malach. And what do we do standing like a malach? Brachas Yidam and based on Yecheskel Aleph Zayin. V'ragleim regel yeshara. The malachim stand idle, motionless. They're not moving anywhere. What is the Amida? The Amida is the total hisbatlus in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what is that ideal about? As the Seder Yom, the Maharal and others explain. Avada, we have to be a holech. We're on the move. We're always shaking and shuckling. And Jews can't sit still. We're on the move. We're on the go. We're always doing. We're always moving. We're always shaking. We're always accomplishing. You can't just sit still. Jews don't just chill, lie on a beach and do nothing. Well, we hope that's not the case. You got to be on the move. You got to be learning, accomplishing, doing, thinking. Something, using the brain, using the kaiches. So we're always hochem. But what? There's a time every day of when we make ourselves like malachim v'ragleim regel yeshara. Put your feet together. Put them and stand like a malach who is described as an omeid, as an itzav. What's the idea? Explains the Malbim, to show that his spotless Eibishter, I'm taking my bechira and my koach of alich and I'm giving it over to you. Begeder bato ritzoin chalifnei ritzono. Always per beis mishnah dalet. I'm giving you over my koach alich. I'm giving you over the bittul of my rotzon lefnei ritzono yisbarach. I'm giving you all of me. I'm subjugating that and making myself subservient to you. And that's the Amida service. What do we have? Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. The Icarus, it's not just a Chag. It's a regel. It's Aliyah l'regel. You got to be on the move. You got to go up to Yerushalayim or Kodesh, L'res V'leos Panashim. You got to get inspired. You got to be ready to go and to pick. And what's Rosh Hashana all about? Rosh Hashana is Emr L'fonei Malchiyos Kedisha Tam Lichuni Aleichem, as the Gemara indicates from Rosh Hashana to Zayin Malach. This is Zman. Make yourself like a Malach. Do L'fonei Miyah to Omeid. This is what you stand in your Mavalti Yechir Eibishter. I want to give all of me to all of you. I'm going to stand in Tefillah all day in Yom Kippur, and a lot of the day in Rosh Hashana. I'm going to stand seized by Ema, Yira, Resis, and Zia by Pachad. I'm going to be frozen in place. Eibishter, this is a Zman. I'm the Ever L'Fnei Adono. It's not a focus on Aliyah. It's not a Zman of Aliyah B'Raglayim Shalei. It's a Zman of taking my Raglayim and saying I'm going to be Mavatam Machira. I want to merge and fuse my free will, take my absolute free will to choose freely, to give over the Bechira Chavshis to the Ratzon HaBorei. I'm standing as a Malach, as an Omeid, as an Itzav. Del L'Fnei Miyah to Omeid. That's a Rosh Hashana. That's a Yom Kippur. Hatzloch and Bracha. Ksivach Simatayba. We'll see you at Hashem for 8 o'clock to 9. Rabbi Nuviger, followed by myself.